Yes. So, Professor Bhate, please.
Okay, thank you. And hi, everybody. We are still in the rule Avyayam Vibhakti, Samipa Samruddhi, etc., etc., etc. We have actually come halfway through, and we have finished last time Atyaya, if I'm not mistaken. Uh, will someone confirm that we stopped with Atyaya last time, or Atyaya we have yet to take up? Somebody from the audience. Because I don't know, I don't have the video clip also with me.
No, we finished Atyaya. I think. Yeah, Atyaya. I
Any,
think we finished.
anyway, I will take Atyaya once again, the repetition, and then I will proceed further. I
Okay.
remember Nirmakshikam certainly I dealt with last time because I um, referred to Kalidasa. So, Atyayaha Abhutatvam. Atyaya refers to Abhutatva, and that is non-existence, not existing. Actually, this Atyaya is defined by the commentators not only just as non-existence, but non-existence of something which is already existing or which is already in existence. And therefore, Siddhanta Kaumudi takes it in the sense of dhvamsa or pradhvamsa bhava. So finally, it denotes decay, passing away, destruction, end, etc. And therefore, abhutatvam atikramaha. It is rendered as atikramaha, that is crossing over, crossing beyond, passing away. You can translate it in better appropriate English phrase. Atitani himani nirhimam. So earlier there was a lot of snow and now the snow has melted and therefore the whole thing is without himo. And hima means snow as well as cold. So nishitam vartate. Atitani himani can also refer to cold winter because atitani himani in the sense of himo in the sense of snow uh, applies better to countries like Russia and Europe and other some places in US. Whereas as far as India is concerned, we can say Shita. So cold has gone away because at the advent of summer, maybe. And therefore Nishitam Vartate. It is no more cold. The cold has passed away, gone away. And then there is some discussion. I don't know whether I refer to it, but discussion in the commentaries regarding the difference between Atyaya and Arthabhava, because both of them refer to absence of something, non-existence of something. And therefore, what exactly is the difference is the question raised by the commentators. And the reply they give is that Arthabhava refers to Atyanta Bhava, that is absolute non-existence. I remember last time we discussed four kinds of abhava according to the Nayayikas, and Atyanta Bhava is one of them. And Atyaya, Atyaya refers to destruction, whereas Atyanta Bhava refers to absolute non-existence. This is the difference. So Atyaya refers to Pradhvamsa Bhava, and Artha Bhava refers to Atyanta Bhava. So this is the difference according to the commentators. They have to show the difference because if they don't show, it would mean that Panini is using this two terms to convey the same meaning. So there is a fault of redundancy. Now we switch over to the next meaning of avyaya, and that is asamprati. Samprati means at present. Samprati itself is an indeclinable. So it means now. And asamprati is a negation, prohibition of what is not now. So asamprati can roughly be rendered as not now. So whenever this meaning is to be conveyed, the avyaya is compounded with a samartha subandh. Upabhogasya vartamanakala pratishedaha. So it's a negation, refutation, prohibition of enjoyment in present, samprati. So you cannot enjoy a certain thing in the present. This is what is implied when that particular compound is used. And the example is ati taisrukam. Taisruka is a kind of a cover, protection, a shawl, something related to clothing. And commentators explain it as a cloth, something similar to a shawl, which is produced in a village called Tisruka. So this must be a kind of a specialized or a designer shawl, which is prepared only in this particular place and must be very popular during those days. But I don't know to which place is this ancient Tisruka identified. To which place in modern times it is identified. And Tisruka is also derived with the help of Vartika from tree something. We are not going into that detail. But Taisruka is derived from Tisruka in the sense of being produced in that place. Taisruke bhavam, Tisruke bhavam, Taisrukam. So the Tadita suffix an is added in the sense of Tatra bhavam to the word Tisruka, and we have the derivative Taisruka. And this derivative refers to that shawl. And this reminds me of Marathi, of course. Those who are not acquainted with Marathi may not understand much. But there is a word Paithani in Marathi. And this word Paithani refers to a particular kind of a sari which is produced in a place called Paithan. So sometimes the products are named after the place in which they are produced. So this is one such example. Ati Taisrukam, and then the commentator Kashikakara explains the word Taisruka as Achadanam. Taisrukam Achadanam, Tasya Ayam Upabhoga Kalo Na Bhavati Ityartha. So Atikrantam Atikrantam Taisrukam we cannot say. Atikrantaha Taisrukam. Kalaha Atikrantaha Taisrukam. So this is a period which has gone beyond Taisrukam. Tasyayam upabhoga kalaha na vartati na bhavati ityartha. So it means that maybe again there is a reference to summer, and now summer has started, and therefore you cannot put on this kind of shawl. And if you are putting it, then it is wrong. It is improper. Asamprati, which literally means not now, also secondarily conveys not proper. It is not appropriate, or it is not proper. So this meaning also can be understood or can be taken to be understood from this compound. Next example is of Shabda Pradurbhava. Shabda Pradurbhava literally means, Pradurbhava means rise or arising. Shabda Pradurbhava therefore means arising of a word or a rise of a word. And then secondarily, we can understand it in the sense of becoming evident, appearance, because he says prakashata shabdas, prakashata. It becomes manifest everywhere. Prakasham ityasya ka artha, prakasham is used in the sense of manifest, obvious. So Shabda Pradurbhava means a word becoming manifest, a word appearing everywhere, a word becoming evident. And altogether, it finally means that the word which is known to everyone, which is known everywhere. And the example is iti panini and tat panini. The meaning given is panini shabdaha loke prakashate yarthaha. Iti panini vartate can be a sentence. And then this expression could mean the word panini is evident, it is audible everywhere. And then further we can say that it is in the air, or to use a particular phrase, we can say Panini is the talk of the town. So this we can take this particular expression, we can take as an evidence for Panini's popularity. So everywhere there is this word Panini is heard. Paninihi, Paninihi, Paninihi is being heard everywhere, which means that Akumaram Yashah Paninihi, as we saw earlier. So the name Panini has reached even to the children of that place, of the country. Panini Shabdaha Prakashate. The word Panini, you can say Prakashate literally also. Prakashate means shining. The word Panini is shining everywhere. These days, I think these youngsters also use this word. You are shining. Then another expression or example is Tat Panini. Tat literally means that, also then, there, therefore, at that time. It is, of course, here it is used in the as an indeclinable. So Tat Panini means Panini at that time, or therefore Panini, something like that. Tat Panini vartate sarvatru. Panini at that time. Atra Panini, Tatra Panini, Adya Panini, Shvaha Panini. You can take it any sense, either space or time. This word tat, I mean. Panini Shabdaha loke prakashate. Paschat. Paschat, after. So very, very clear word, very common. Anuratham padatam. This example comes from army context. So ratha, chariot. Anuratham, after the army of chariots. Padatam, after the army of chariots comes the infantry, comes the army of foot soldiers. So first comes the army of chariots, and then comes the army of foot soldiers. I really don't know the arrangement on the battlefield of these different types of armies, but here it implies that the chariot army is ahead of the army of foot soldiers. Padatam is a word which is derived from padati. Padati is a original word which means either a pedestrian or a foot soldier. Padbhyam atati iti padati. So it's a Krudanta form. Padbhyam atati. Atati walks, wanders, and therefore he is called Padati. So Padatam here in this particular context, it means Padatinam Samuha. And this Samuha in the context of army is army, battalion of foot soldiers. Otherwise, you can use the word Padatam also in the sense of a group of pedestrians. Anuratham Padatam Rathanam Paschat. Yatharthe yad avyayam tat samasyate. That refers to the next meaning. After Paschat, Samprati Shabda Pradurbhava, Paschat, then comes Yatha. Now here is some change in the interpretation of the word. All the earlier words, they conveyed their own meaning. But here, the word Yatha conveys the word, not the word Yatha, but it conveys the meaning of the word Yatha, even though it itself is an indeclinable. In case of the earlier words, they were not indeclinables. But here, Yatha itself is an indeclinable, but even then, here it is interpreted not in the sense of Yatha as indeclinable, but whatever meaning is conveyed by Yatha, in that sense, whatever avyaya is there is compounded. So it necessarily may not be the avyaya Yatha, but it can be any other indeclinable which conveys the meaning of Yatha. So Yatha here means Yathartho, that which conveys the meaning of Yatha. And therefore he says Yatharthe yad avyayam vartate tat samasyate. And further he explains the meanings of the avyaya Yatha as yogyata, vipsa, padarthan ativritti, sadrishyam cho iti yatharthaha. So there are 4 meanings which are conveyed by the indeclinable Yatha. Yogyata, propriety, appropriateness or suitability, yogyata. And this is again a very simple word, easy to understand. We'll go to the examples, and when we are dealing with the examples, we'll try to understand the meanings of the other words. Yogyatayam anurupam. Anurupam is a word which is derived from the word rupa, rupasya yogyam. Actually, it is not, although avyaya comes in the beginning, it is not always used as an avyaya. Anurupam, rupasya yogyam, anurupam. Anurupaha, anurupa. So this is a supsupa samasa, you can say. And rupasya yogyam means resembling or corresponding to or worthy, suitable. Here the word rupa, which generally means a visible form. The very, very literal and common meaning of the word rupa is visible form. But here in this word anurupa, the word rupa is used in a very different sense. And unless we understand it in that different sense, we really cannot interpret the word anurupa. So here it means a manner or a nature of something. So anurupa means in a proper or in a fitting manner or in a suitable style. The example is, example itself is anurupa. Rupa yogyam bhavati. So here it is used as an indeclinable, but as I told you, it is also used as just a supsupa samasa. Here it is an illustration of avyayi bhava compound. I think Chandra gives a complete sentence. I don't know why Kashika doesn't give a complete sentence while giving the examples. Why this frugality? I don't understand. But anurupam, in which context it is used, and whether it is used as a neuter or it is used as an indeclinable, nothing is clear. We have only to understand from the context that anurupam is an avyayi bhava samasa, and it conveys this meaning rupa yogyam, so fitting or worthy of the style, or having a proper manner. But when we come to Chandra, perhaps we will understand it better. Rupa yogyam bhavati ityartha. Vipsayam artham prati pratyartham. Vipsa is a desiderative krudanta, and it is explained as vyaptum ichcha, desire to pervade. And this desire to pervade can exist even also even in a non-living object. Asat, not asat, ajiva. So pervasion or repetition is the meaning we finally understand from Vipsa. The example is artham prati pratyartham. But kim pratyartham, he has again not explained, he has not given a complete sentence. So artham prati kim. Artha can be interpreted at least in two different senses, and artha has many other meanings also. But in this context, perhaps we can find it in two meanings relevant. Covering every object. Artha means an object, or artha means simply meaning in the grammatical context. So covering every object, we can say pratyartham atma vartate. Pratyartham jivaha vartate. Or some such thing. Whatever covers each and every object in this world, pratyartham. Or with reference to each and every object, also that also can be a proper rendering of this compound word pratyartham. Again, I found a better explanation in Chandra, which we will be reading very soon. Artham prati pratyartham. Padarthan ativruttau. Padartho, again object. Anativrutti means no ativrutti. No ativrutti. Ativrutti means not crossing. No ativrutti means not crossing. Ativrutti means going beyond crossing or surpassing. And anativrutti means not going beyond. That means remaining within the limits, not exceeding. So here the example is yatha shakti. And this, the Laukika vigraha of this compound is given as Shaktim anatikramyo, not exceeding ability, power, or capacity, not going beyond Yatha Shakti. So, Yatha Shakti karma anushteyam, everybody should perform his duty according to one's own ability. He should not go beyond his own ability. This is the meaning conveyed by the word Yatha Shakti. Anupurvyam. Anupurvyam is anukramaha. Yes, one more thing I forgot. He gives 4 meanings of yatha, isn't it? Yogyata, Vipsa, Padarthanuvritti, and Sadrushya. For Sadrushya, Kashika doesn't give any example here. The first 3 meanings, we find 3 examples. But Sadrushya, he doesn't give any example. Probable reason is that perhaps in the very next rule he is dealing with yatha. Yes, yatha asadrushya. In that rule he is talking about the indeclinable yatha, and the rule says that it is compounded with a samartha subanta except when it conveys the meaning sadrushya. So perhaps Kashikakara wants to carry that backwards here also in the meanings of yatha. So even in case of other indeclinables which convey the meaning sadrushya, avyayabhava samasa does not take place. Perhaps this is what he wants to imply, and that is why he does not give any example. I don't find any explanation in the commentaries regarding why he omits an illustration for sadrushya, and apparently this is the reason. In fact, it would have been proper to give an example here, because here he doesn't deal with the indeclinable yatha as he deals with it in the next rule, but he deals with many other indeclinables which convey the meaning same as yatha. And moreover, we find an example in the Siddhanta Kaundu for Sadrushya. And he says, Bhattaji Dikshita says, Harehe Sadrushyam Sahari. So here Sadrushyam means similarity with Hari. Actually, I don't know, and we have to find out whether such usages really existed, or whether these words like this were really used in the later literature. It needs to be checked. But anyway, this is a kind of a lapse on the part of Kashika, and it seems to be fulfilled by or filled up by the later commentary Siddhanta Kaundu. And we have a full example like Sahari. And the next meaning is Anupurvya. Anupurvya is again a Taddhita, state of being Anupurva. And Anupurva means having an order. Purvam Anugatam Anupurvam. So having an order, having symmetry, having a particular sequence, so which follows the Purva, Anupurva, following the Purva, following the earlier. So this is the meaning of Anupurva, having a sequence. And Anupurvasya Bhavaha or Anupurvasya Karma, this is a Taddhita meaning in which the suffix Shnai is added. And I think I have shown it on the paper down below there, Anupurvasya Bhavaha. And I have also cited the rule Gunavachana Brahmanadipya Karmanicha. So this Shnai in the sense of Bhava or Karman. So we have a Taddhita word Anupurvya. So some kind of a sequence is or order is intended or is implied here, or it is rather conveyed by that compound. Anupurvyam anukramaha anujyeshtham pravishantu bhuvantaha. Good. So at least here he has given a complete sentence. Anujyeshtham pravishantu bhavantaha. Jyeshthanupurvena Urvyena bhavantaha pravishantu ityartha. So may you enter in the order of seniors. It's not like first come, first serve, but the seniors first, and then the others. Sometimes you find when you are boarding an aircraft, they always give a preference to the seniors, those who are in the wheelchair and those who are seniors, etc., etc. Similarly, you can imagine a situation where the persons are invited for a dinner, and then the person who is standing at the door, he announces that in the dining hall, please enter according to your seniority. So let the seniors come first and then the rest. This is the meaning of anujyeshtham. Jyeshthanupurvena bhavantah pravishantu ityarthaha. May you enter in the sequence, in the order of seniority. Yogapadyam. Yogapadya is again derived from Yugapat, which is an avyaya. This also is a Taddita formation. Yugapato bhavaha Yogapadyam. It means simultaneity, something, certain things happening at one and the same time. Ekakalata. Sachakram dhehi. Yugapat chakram dhehi ityarthaha. Sachakram. Chakra means a wheel. So hold the wheel simultaneously. But again, it is not clear simultaneously with what, because simultaneity always implies at least, the presence of at least two entities, two objects. So here he simply says, Sa chakram dehi, yugapat chakram dehi ityartha, but yugapat can be properly understood only when we have some other object there. So maybe we can imagine something like danda, staff, or anything. I mean, again, you have to imagine it. So hold the wheel simultaneously with a danda or with a staff, or maybe with another wheel. There are two wheels and hold them together. Some such meaning we have to understand, because it is Yugapat. Yugapat chakram dehi ityartha. If you can give any better interpretation of this, you are most welcome. I really failed to understand meaning of some of these expressions. So you please come forward if you have any better interpretation. Sa chakram is derived from saha chakram. Saha is an indeclinable here, because sa is not at all found as an indeclinable. It's not in the list of indeclinables. So the avyaya saha, which is here used in the sense of yugapat, and saha can fit very well in the context. Saha means together with, along with, and therefore you can say saha kenachit anyena chakram dehi. Kya saha chakrena dehi. Sa chakram dehi. Here, saha loses its final syllable ho. By the rule, I'm sorry I could not put it on the paper, but I can tell you right now, the rule is avyayi bhavecha akale. And this rule says sahasya saha avyayi bhave. But that avyayi bhava should not contain any word denoting kala. So everywhere in other cases, saha is replaced by so. Sahasya saha. The rule number is 6381. Sachakram dhehi, yugapat chakram dehi ityartha. And the next meaning is sadrushya. Sadrushya simply means similarity. Sadrusham tulyata. Now, something interesting here. Kimarthamidam uchyate yathartha ityeva siddham. Now look, Kashikakara doesn't give an example of sadrushya, but here he refers to sadrushya as one of the four meanings of sadrushya. So whether the illustration given by Kashikakara is missing in the text, in the manuscripts, or he forgot to give an illustration is really not clear. Unless the critical edition of Kashika comes up, we cannot say anything about it. But the fact remains that Kashikakara has forgotten to give an illustration of sadrushya, whereas while explaining the meaning sadrushya, he raises the question why this is mentioned as a separate meaning. Kimarthamidam uchyate yathartha ityeva siddham. But before that, sadrushyam is interpreted as tulyata, similar, having similarity, or even similarity. Kimartham idam uchyate yathartha ityeva siddham gunabhutepi sadrushye yathasyat. So here the meaning sadrushyam is repeated, although the meaning sadrushyam is included in one of the four meanings of yatha, because Panini wants to extend the compounding to an indeclinable which conveys sadrushya not as the chief part of the meaning, not as a prominent meaning, but as a subordinate meaning. Guna bhutepi sadrushye yathasyat. And he gives the illustration sadrushah kikhya sakikhi. Kikhi means a monkey. A monkey, or I think even some other animal. So here sadrushah kikhya sakikhi simply means similar to monkey. One who is similar to monkey. So this refers to somebody who is similar to monkey, which means that sadrushya here refers to sadrushya and not sadrushya, which means here we have the meaning sadrushyavan, and therefore sadrushya becomes subordinate to sadrushyavan. Whereas in the meaning, in the illustration which he did not give, and which perhaps we will find in, we have already said, mentioned Sahari. Harehe sadrushyam, similarity with Hari. Actually, it means similarity of Hari with something. But as the commentators interpret it, we have to understand it in the sense of similarity with Hari. So here, Sahari, in this compound, sadrushya is the meaning or is the prominent meaning of the compound. Sahari means Harehe sadrushyam. Whereas Sakikhi means one who is similar to Hari. So one who is having similarity with, I'm sorry, not Hari. One who is having similarity with Kiki. So in both these examples, Sadrusha appears in two different places. In Sahari, it is the main member of the compound. Whereas in Sakiki, it is subordinate. Sadrusha is subordinate because it is Sadrushyavan, that is understood in this case. Will you please excuse me for some time? Yes, somebody is there. So, Sadrushah Kikhya Sakikhi. It is again interesting to see that in Siddhanta Kaumudi we have a better example. Sadrushaha Sakhya Sasaki. Why did Kashika mention this not so good example? Describing somebody as a monkey is not really a proper thing. It's a kind of an abuse, in fact. So Sadrusha Sakhya Sasaki is all right. This example is given in Kashika. When we say Sadrusha Sakhya Sasaki, this appears to be rather a Tatpurusha compound, or rather, yeah, as an example of Tatpurusha compound. But even then, since Sadrusha is mentioned here, we have to understand it as an Avyayi. And obviously, it is used as an Avyayi Bhava, which means that it is not declined in different cases. I also refer to similar example. There are a few Avyayi Bhava compounds which convey an object which are Uttara Padartha Pradhanam, which refer to an object like Raja Purushaha, Sakhya Sadrushaha, somebody. But formally they are Avyayi Bhava. And Panini has always preferred to give a formal description. So this also is one such example. Further, we have Sampattihi. Sampatti, actually, as soon as we read the word, we understand the meaning, wealth, richness, but it is not like this here. It has a very different meaning. Sampatti here means Anurupaha Atma Bhavaha. And I found some better explanation of this Anurupa Atma Bhava in Siddhanta Kaumudi as Sampatti, not Sampatti, as Ruddhe Adhikyam Samruddhihi and Anurupa Atma Bhavaha Sampatti iti Vedaha. And further, Balmanorama says Anurupaha Yogyaha Atma Bhavaha Sochitam Karma Ityarthaha. So something which is fitting with one's own personality, something which is fitting with one's own background, with one's own family, with one's own profession, whatever. So this kind of meaning of Sampatti is a very peculiar meaning. But in order to distinguish Sampatti from Samruddhi, because both of them, they almost denote the same thing, commentators tried to give two different explanations. Samruddhi they interpret as Ruddhe Adhikyam, that we have already seen. So growth in prosperity. Whereas Sampatti means just fitting with one's personality. The example here is Sabrahma Babhravana. Babhrava again is derived from the word Babru, and Babru is the name of maybe a sage or the leader of a particular clan or a group. And therefore, Babhrava means those who belong to the clan of Babrus or who are descendants of Babru. So in case of these Babrus, he says Sabrahma. Brahma again has to be interpreted in this particular context, not in its literal sense, that ultimate reality as we understand from the word Brahman, as we find it in the text on Vedanta. But here it refers to Brahmanya or Brahminhood. Brahma here means Brahminhood. So all these Babravas, they are Brahmins. So they perform something which is Sub-Brahma, which is quite appropriate with their Brahminhood, which is quite fitting with the priestly class. Sabrahma Brahmananam. So the behavior is Babravas, behavior of Babravas is in keeping with, or it is appropriate to their Brahminhood. This is the meaning understood from the compound Sabrahmo. Sakshatram Shalankayanana. A similar example, Shalankayanas again are the descendants of Shalanku or Shalanku, and that might refer to the Kshatriya leader. So those who belong to that Kshatriya clan or the group belonging to Shalanka, their behavior, Shalankayananam Sakshatram, their behavior is quite in fitting with their character as warriors. This is the meaning of Sampatti, a very different, unique meaning. And again, the compounds also are similarly quite unique. And actually, we need to find attestations for such compounds. Sakshatram Shalankayananam. Nobody has to comment on anything so far. All of you are just keeping quiet and listening to me. I thought somebody would come up with some explanation, some better interpretation. Anyway, if you don't have anything to add.
I have one doubt. Can I ask?
You have? Okay.
Yes, Nidhi here. Ma'am,
Yes.
when we were talking about Sahasya Saha and Avibhava Chakale. I just remembered one example, Sapada Saptavadanam. When we are saying Sapada, is it Avibhava Samas, or it is because Pada is definitely related to Kala, and there we are having Sapada or Sardha Ashtavadanam when we say, or it has nothing to do with this Samas.
Which is that example? Will you please repeat? Sapada Saptavadanam. Yeah, Sapada.
That Pada is denoting the Kala. Yes. And still we can find so used there.
I don't think it is an Avibhava. No, Pada doesn't denote Kala actually here. It's only through the context that we understand.
Yeah, it's part of full.
But it is perhaps a Tatpurusha compound. When we read the rules from that section, we'll find Padena Saha Sapadaha.
Okay.
Something like that. But otherwise, what is in your mind? What do you think? Do you think it is an Avyayabhava compound?
I was just thinking, because we never used only Sapadam. But if I say Sapadam Pathami, then it will not be Kala there, no? It will be one full Adhyay plus another 1/4 Adhyay. So it will not be Kala in that case. Pada used only in time sense, I feel.
It depends upon what meaning you understand from so.
Yeah.
Padena Saha, if it is Padena Saha, then one Adhyaya along with one Pada.
Yes. But then it is not denoting definitely Kala. So it can be Sapadam Pathami. It can be said.
Even here, when you say Sapada Saptavadane or whatever. So only secondarily Pada denotes time, isn't it?
Yes.
But here originally Pada means just 1/4, isn't it?
Yeah, that's true. Yes, ma'am. Thank you.
But rather, I think it is better, isn't it, to consider it?
Find out later when we do.
Hello.
I don't have that, but I vaguely remember that also there is a compound and we found it. Okay, can we go further, or any other question or any other observation? What kind of?
I'll request the participants to please mute their microphones, because we have seeing some disturbance. I think Ingeleji has his microphone on, so please turn it off. Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you.
Somebody wants
yeah, madam, just one question I would, in the same connection, basically. Isn't it better? I mean, this is just a kind of Saha Bahubri rather, the Sapada which you are talking about.
Okay.
Yeah, rather than considering it as Avya Bhava.
It depends upon what kind of meaning you are going to express by that compound word.
Yeah, because now we are in the case of Sapada Saptavadanam or whatever, we are using it rather as an adjective, not as an independent
You want to
Avya.
discuss about Sapada Saptavadana?
Yeah, I mean, any similar examples, like, yeah, that's what she mentioned, so I was just referring to it.
Okay, so when we read this Bahuvrihi section, perhaps that will throw more light on this. Let us see. It could be. Okay, and then we have here Sampattihi Anurupa Atmabhava. Sakalyam. Sakalyam Asheshata. Shesha is remaining. Asheshata means nothing remaining. The state of nothing remaining, that is Sakalya. So ultimately it means completeness, totality, or entirety. Sakalyam. Sakalam, again very simple common word. And the example is Satrunam Abhyavaharati, Sabusam Abhyavaharati. So here is a reference to somebody eating, and while he is eating, he eats everything, Sakalya. Everything, including even grass. Truna is grass, and busa means chaff or husk. So either he or maybe some animal, some kind of a food is given, and then he eats that along with the chaff, along with the husk. And husk is a rough cover on the grain. Usually a human being is not supposed to eat it. Also, a human being is not supposed to eat grass. But maybe perhaps he is so hungry that he doesn't care about what is served to him. And he doesn't care to separate such things which are not actually worthy to eat. And he eats everything greedily. This might be the context. Satrunam abhyavaharati sabusam. Nakinchid abhyavaharyam parityajati. Ite ayam artha adhikartha vachanena pratipadyate. So adhikartha vachana is expressing more meaning. Adhikarthasya vachanam. So through the expression of much more meaning, what we understand here is that he doesn't leave anything which he can eat. Actually, this is an exaggerated statement. We have to understand it. It is not, in reality, he doesn't eat truna, or in reality, he is not eating busa. But it means that he eats everything such a way that he may eat even grass or husk. So in addition to eating normal food, he can even eat grass. And why I say that this is not a statement of fact, Satrunam Abhyavaharati, but it's rather an exaggeration, is because Nyasa comments on this particular example. It says, Yohi Trunani Abhyavaharati, Sakatam Anyat Abhyavaharyam Parityajati. One who eats even grass, I mean, who is capable of eating even grass, how can he live any other thing? So actually, what is understood from such sentences is that he is sakalya completely. So he finishes everything, whatever is served on his platter. But I don't think it means that he eats even truna, even grass. because I'm sure nobody would serve him grass or bush. And if it is to be used in case of animals, well, it is their food. Even husk is their food. So in case of a human being, Truna, you cannot understand as a part of his eating process. He is not actually eating, but he is capable of eating. So had you served him Truna, even that he would have taken, he would have eaten. This seems to be the implied meaning, I think. Na kinchit, and therefore he says na kinchit abhyavaharyam parityajati. So na kinchit anabhyavaharyam parityajati is not stated here. So whatever is worthy of eating, he doesn't live on the platter. He doesn't live there. As you know, we always ask our children to finish everything that is served on the platter. Don't leave anything. So this is about that person. And maybe because he is so hungry, he is eating each and everything. Anyway, this is what appears to me to be the meaning of this illustration. न किंचित अव्यवहार्यं परित्यजति इत्ययम् अर्थः अधिकार्थवचनेन, so which is expressed by the sentence as an adhikartha, as an additional meaning. Antavachane, antaha, anta simply means end, literally. Again, in this context, the meaning is rather delimited. Antaha iti parigrahapekshaya samaptihi uchyate. It's again a very specific context has to be understood here. Parigrahapeksha with reference to the parigraha. And parigraha literally means whatever is received, parigrishyate asau, whatever is taken. So something is given to somebody and then he accepts it, parigraha. Aparigraha is one of the vratas of the brahmacharis. So brahmacharis, they do not accept whatever is given to them, aparigraha, or they don't hold anything with them, parigraha. So in this context in the context of learning or swadhyaya, this parigraha refers to a particular portion from a Vedic text taught by the teacher and assigned for recitation, kanthasthikarana, learning by heart. So this is kind of a technical term used in this context of swadhyaya. And swadhyaya generally refers to the recitation of Vedas. So the context is Pathashala, Vedic Pathashala, where the students are taught to recite different Vedas, and then they are given certain portions to be recited and to be learned by heart. So this particular part of the Vedic text is called parigraha, because that is accepted by the student for recitation. परिग्रहापेक्षया समाप्तिः उच्यते साग्नि अधीते सेष्टि पशुबंधम अधीते. So this refers to a student who is studying in the Pathashala and he studies a particular section which deals with Agni. Agni can mean Agnyadhana or Agni Chayana. So arranging the Vedi to keep the fire or the sacrifice, that is Agni Chayana. So that portion from the Vedic text which describes arranging the fire or arranging the fireplace is called Agni. Agni here again doesn't mean just fire, but it refers to that chapter or that section which deals with Agni Chayana or Agni Adhana. So it has again a ritual context. And here is a student who is reciting it, and while describing that student, somebody says Sagni Adite. The student recites up to the chapter, up to the section dealing with Agni. So end here is relative. It's not an absolute end. It's not a, in other words, it's not a full stop. The whole text has not come to an end. If the whole Veda has come to an end, then this won't be the expression. So a small Vedic chapter, which means a part, and therefore instead of full stop, it is a colon here. It's a maybe comma or a colon or a semicolon rather. So Sagni Adite, he recites or he studies the text up to Agni. And then Seshti Pashubandham. Ishti means a sacrifice, and Pashubandha means again a kind of a ritual to be performed, and which in which again some description about how to tie the animal. So it refers to a Pashu animal sacrifice. Animal is to be tied to the yupa and all such ritual. So Ishti and Pashubandha. So this student reads or recites the portion dealing with Ishti and Pashubandha. Seshti Pashubandha, Ishti along with Pashubandha, and up to the end of that section. So he reads it covering that portion. Seshti Pashubandham Sagni Pashubandhantam Adhite. So up to the end of that section. Iyam samaptihi asakale adhyayane bhavati iti sakalyat pruthaguchyate. That is why they have to explain this meaning of anta. Anta and sakalya, they refer to two different meanings. Sakalya refers to complete thing, whereas anta refers to a relative end. Sakalya refers to the end of something, complete end. And therefore, anta means even when the study is incomplete, and when it is complete up to a certain section, the compound takes place. Whereas sakalya is denoted by yet another kind of a compound, where completeness is conveyed. Iyam samapti asakale pi adhyayane bhavati iti sakalyat pruthak uchyate. Sakalya and anta, though they appear to be quite similar in meaning, they have a slightly different shade of meaning. So this is how we have finished this sutra number 6, which was rather long, containing about 15 meanings. And now we come to the Chandra. Do you want a pause to discuss anything? Or do you have any questions, or we straight away move to some Chandra?
May I ask you a question in this point? So, isn't it the case that actually grammarians hold the opinion that, all this, the upasargas and these indeclinables which are used here, I mean, they usually do not denote meaning, but they are simply dyotakas and not vachakas. Isn't it the general kind of a stand of the grammarians? But here what we see is, I mean, he's interpreting the word vachana as like denoting certain meaning. So is there any, I mean, a difference when you're saying that usual position is that the upasargas and all this, I mean, they are basically dyotakas. Now, of course, here they are not upasargas, but they are still nipatas and they are dyotakas and not vachakas. So, I mean, why Panini? I mean, is it really very? I mean, I really wonder whether the commentator's explanation, whether that is really justified, or simply Panini is using this word vachana here in the sense of artha. I mean, instead of saying sakalyanta artheshu, I mean, he's saying sakalyanta vachaneshu. Is it something like this? What do you think about this issue?
We really do not know what Panini's position is. That is very clear. Panini doesn't deal with semantics. He doesn't give you any description about vacha meaning and jyota meaning, and it is nowhere mentioned by him. It's the commentators who, for the first time, distinguish between vacha and jyota. Even Yaska also discusses this, whether a particular word conveys a direct meaning or it implies. And upasargas and indeclinables particularly are understood to convey indirectly, perhaps because they do not convey any direct entity or object. I think so. So it is something impersonal, something not referring to an object, and therefore perhaps they feel that we cannot use the word vacha directly express it. Moreover, they convey different meanings in different contexts. It quite often it happens, as we have seen here, yatha conveys 4 different meanings. So which of these is a direct meaning? That also might have been the question faced by them. Well, this is my guesswork. And they might have understood all these meanings as indirectly denoted. And yes, in Prakriya also, they had some difficulties. If an upasarga directly conveys that meaning, then how to connect that with the verbal meaning? And they come up with the theory that the verb itself conveys the meaning, whereas the upasarga only brings to light that particular meaning. Because upasargas are added to verbs to convey certain meaning which is not conveyed by the verb otherwise. And therefore, the grammarians come up with the theory that the meaning already exists in the verb, whereas the upasarga only denotes it. And at different places, the upasarga denotes again different meanings. So maybe in order to accommodate all such meanings and ascribe all these meanings to one upasarga, they might have found it difficult to call them vachya. And therefore they set up this separate category of jyotya. But if you remember, even Nirukta Yaskar discusses this problem. Perhaps in the first or maybe in the second, I don't remember. But this problem was faced even by the earlier linguists. But well, we can have some brainstorming on this, and yes, at the same time, we need to look into the details of the relation between the upasarga and the verb on the one hand, and between avyaya and the other word with which it is connected on the other.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
So that needs to be further discussed, and
yes.
some brainstorming has to be done on that. This is what I feel for the present. Okay.
Yes, yeah, it's fine. Yeah, it's fine.
So maybe we can discuss it later. But before we discuss it, we have to again study carefully what the stand of these commentators is. Such issues are found to be discussed in later texts like Manjusha and Bhushana. So Paramalagu Manjusha, Lagu Manjusha, and Vyakarana Bhushana. These texts they elaborately discuss these issues, and unless we read those texts, we cannot really come up with a good answer. The answer I gave you is again an ad hoc answer. I should say a spontaneous reply. Because our Guruji always used to tell us that Netina Vaktayam. If somebody asks you a question, you just don't say, I don't know, but try to give some explanation. So only with this idea, I tried to give you some explanation. But yes, needs to be further checked. Okay. All right. So shall we go for, further? Mahesh? Oh, what happened?
Oh yes, we can move on. We can move on.
You have gone in trance? Okay, so now let us read Chandra. And here I need a lot of input from you people who are experts in Chandra. The Chandra Sutra says Asankham Vibhakti Sameep Abhav Khyati Paschat Yatha Yugapat Sampat Sakalyarthe. So the very first thing which we notice is the less number of the meanings, less than what Panini has listed. And actually, even before that, the most prominent change we find is Avyaya is substituted by Asankham. And here I would like the Chandra experts to comment, but after we try to understand this. So Asankham Subantam, Asankhya means Avyaya. Asankham Subantam Vibhaktyadinam Arthe Vartamanam. Subantena saha ekartam bhavati. So asankhya subanta, a subanta, but which is asankhya, which does not convey sankhya. Perhaps this is what Chandra wants to convey. Is ekartha becomes one in the meaning or conveys one and the same meaning along with another subanta when it conveys meanings vibhakti etc. Now Mahesh, here how can we understand vibhakti is a vachyarth of avyaya is also a question. How can a case ending be a vachyartha? Because case ending itself is an abstract entity and it conveys something which is further abstract. So whether an abstract meaning can be a vachyartha is actually the basic question which is raised by this vibhakti. Okay, so Tatra Vibhakti, most of the things appear to be the same as in Kashika here. Tatra Vibhaktyarthe tavat Strishu Katha Pravruta Adhistri. So the same example here of Vibhakti, Vibhaktyarthe Strishu Katha Pravrutta. I don't need to explain it. Samipe, Kumbhasya Samipam, Upakumbham. Again the same example, but I think they have dropped one here. So Chandra perhaps wants to achieve brevity also by restricting to one example each, because Kashika gives two, Upakumbham and Upamanikam, whereas here we have only one, Upakumbham. So this difference also you can note. Abhavaha sambandhi vedat bhuvidhaha. And now here, when vibhakti sameepa, and he doesn't deal with samruddhi here at all. Perhaps samruddhi he takes up later when he is dealing with sampat, but he is now dealing with vriddhi, and vriddhi he includes in abhava, and he says abhavaha sambandhi bhedat bhuvidha. Abhava is of many kinds, depending upon the distinction relating to sambandhin, relating to that with which it is connected. Sambandhin you can either interpret as relation or that which is related. So abhava is of different kinds based on the sambandhin or the relation. So it means that he has subsumed 3 or 4 meanings which have something negative in them, like vriddhi, arthabhava, atyaya, and I don't know whether asamprati also is taken, but that we will find out. So they are all included in abhava. And this abhava differ, the kinds of abhava, they differ from each other on the basis of their sambandhin. Tatra rudhya bhave. Now there is vriddhi is interpreted as rudhya bhava. So there is absence of ruddhi here, absence of growth. Vigata ruddhir yavananam duryavanam. The example is the same again, duryavanam, but only the meaning is slightly differently explained. Ultimately, it comes to the same. Vigata ruddhir yavananam. And here he says vriddhi. Duryavanam. Again, I think restricted to one example. Here we have Gavadikanam Ruthe Abhava Durgavadikam and Duryavanam. Whereas in Chandra we have only one example. Artha Bhavi Abhavo Makshikanam Nirmakshikam. They're the same. And here he has given both the examples. Nirmakshikam and Nirmashakam. Further, Atikrama Bhavi. Atikrama Bhava doesn't mean Atikramasya Abhavaha. As Artha Bhava means Arthasya Abhavaha. But here we have to interpret the word Atikrama in a different sense, it appears to me. Atikrama Bhava means Atikramaha cha asau abhavascha. So we have to take it in the sense of Karmadharai. Because if we interpret it as Tatpurusha Atikramasya Abhavaha, then it would mean something different. Abhava in the form of Atikram. It will mean exactly opposite. Atigatani trunani nistrunam. Oh, here we have a different example. Here, Atitani himani nirhimam, and here we have nistrunam. Okay, I don't know the reason why he changed nirhimam into nistrunam. Maybe you might have found some reason also for giving different examples, or it is just Swatantrechasya Munehe. I don't know how to explain it. Have you thought about it? Why he gives different examples at certain places and retains the same examples as they appear in Kashika? Maybe if you have thought about it, you can certainly share it with us. Sampratyabhave atitaisrukam achadana. So Sampratyabhava is the same as asamprati, and the example also is the same as we find in Kashika atitaisrukam. Khyatau paninehe khyatihi iti paninihi. So Shabda Pradurbhavaha, which is a very lengthy expression, is replaced by the word khyati, which is certainly a better expression, better word. And from our point of view, khyati is a more common word. And we immediately understand the meaning from khyati than from the word Shabda Pradurbhava. Khyatau paninehe khyati iti panini. Tat panini. So both the illustrations are given here. Paschadarte anuratham paratam. Same meaning and same illustration. Yathartha aneka prakara. So here he also gives the word yatha here in the sutra, and he uses the word yatha in the sense of yathartho, meanings of yatha. And therefore he says yathartha aneka prakara. The meaning of yatha is multiple, manifold. Tatra yogyatayam anurupam sarupo bhavati. Yogyata in the sense of propriety, appropriateness. He gives a complete example. Anurupam sarupaha bhavati. Sarupa literally means one having the same appearance or same form, and same with somebody, of course. So one having the same form with the other is anurupam, is suitable for the other, obviously. So this example certainly makes sense. So there are two persons, and one is having the same appearance, same form, same manner, maybe you can say, as the other, and therefore he holds anurupata. So he holds suitability, appropriateness. So this one type of anurupata here is given in a complete sentence. Then we have vipsayam. Vipsa, the same meaning and the same example, but complete sentence. Pratyartham shabdaha abhinivishante. Artham shabdaha abhinivishante. Words enter into each and every meaning. That really makes sense. And here artha is used in the sense of meaning. Pratyartham shabdaha abhinivishante. And here prati conveys the meaning vipsa, which is the meaning of yatha. Arthanati vruttau. And here we find Chandra has omitted the word pada, and he has written only artha. Instead of padarthanati vrutti, he says arthanati vrutti. Arthanati vruttau. Example, he gives the same yatha shakti. And sadrushya, here he gives a meaning sadrushya, but does he give it as a meaning of yatha? And what follows sadrushya here? Anupurvya. Yes, he gives this as an example of the meaning of yatha. Sadrushya here is mentioned as the meaning of yatha, whereas, I mean, he gives the example, whereas it is completely absent in Kashika, as we have seen. But the meaning, the example he gives is very bad again, as we find it in Kashika. Sadrusha kikya sakikhi. And this meaning is again subordinate. Sadrushaha kikya. Sadrusha used in the subordinate sense. But he doesn't give any example of sadrusha being used in the prominent meaning of the compound. like Sahari, which we find in Siddhanta Kaumudi. So both Kashika and Chandra, they don't give the meaning of Sadrushya as the prominent component of the meaning. Sadrusha Kikya, Sakiki, Anupurvye, and Anupurvya is mentioned in both, and the example is also the same. Yathavruddham, Anujyeshtham. He gives two examples, Yathavruddham and Anujyeshtham also. Anujyeshtham also is an illustration. Do we have it also in Kashika? Let me check it. Anujyeshtham. Yes, Anujyeshtham provision too, but Yathavruddham is not there. Yathavruddham is absent in Kashika, whereas it is given in Chandra. And again, interesting to note that Yatha appears as a component of the compound here, Yathavruddham. Though the word Yatha is used in the sutra as denoting the meanings of Yatha, also Yatha Shakti and Yathavruddham. In Kashika also at one place the indeclinable Yatha is used as a among the illustrations of Yathartho. You will find it. But other places, other indeclinables are used to convey the meaning of Yatha. For instance, for Yogyata Anurupa, for Vipsa Pratyartha, for Anupurvya Anujyesht. So in Kashika, you will find all the three meanings. Yeah, Padarthana Ativritti Yatha Shakti he gives, right. So for Yogyata and for Vipsa, he gives different avyayas, Anu and Prati. Whereas for Padarthana Ativritti, Kashika mentions Yatha Shakti. He directly mentions the indeclinable Yatha. Similarly, we have here Yatha used in only Arthanativritti, whereas in other illustrations, he gives you Prati and Anu. So it's a kind of a mixture. Yathartha means both Yatha and Yathartha. Yaugapadye Sachakram Nidhehi. And further he explains, thanks. Yugapat Chakrani Nidhehi Ityartha. Sachakram Nidhehi means Yugapat Chakrani Nidhehi. You put all the wheels simultaneously. Yugapat Chakrani Nidhehi. Simultaneously with each other. And that really makes some sense. Sampadvidha. Atmabhava Sampatti Samruddhischa. So Samruddhi, which was mentioned separately by Panini, is included here in Sampat. Sampat Vidha. Two kinds of Sampat. One is Atmabhava Sampat and the other one is Samruddhi. And again here examples are the same. Sampannam Brahma, Sabbrahma, Babhravanam. Sampanna Atmabhava Sampatti, as we have seen earlier, in the fitness of their own character. Whereas Samruddhi, he has again dropped this Shalankayana thing. And Samruddhi, again the same example. Samruddhi Madranam Sumudram. Sakalya, again the same example. Satrunam Abhyavaharati, without giving any explanation, whereas the explanation appears in Kashika. And Sagni Adhite also appears without any explanation here. Perhaps maybe we will find explanations in your commentary Panjika or whatever. So, just to conclude on this sutra or on both these sutras, my observations are Ashtadhyayi or Panini enlists or enumerates 16 meanings which are reduced to just 9 in Chandra. And I think they are done quite well. Instead of mentioning several kinds of abhav, we can include them under just one word abhav. And some examples different from Panini they appear in Vritti, Chandra Vritti, whereas some are the same. Vibhakti is the same, Samipa is the same, then all the 4 kinds of meanings, Vriddhi, Artha, Bhava, Atyaya, and Asamprati. They are included in Abhava. And here Abhava, these 4 kinds of Abhavas, they are not as similar to the 4 kinds which are mentioned by Nayayika, but they are based on the relation. And then we find the same examples again in case of other meanings. So this is about the points of similarity and points of contrast between these two. But my questions to these those who are reading Chandra, who are experts in Chandra and who are in the audience, to them is there any special logic behind changing this word Avyaya into Asankhya? What I feel is that Avyaya must have been very commonly used at that time. And Avyaya is a pre-Paninian term, quite commonly used again in earlier literature, and very significant also in itself, Anuvartha Saudi. So is there any special reason behind changing Avyaya into Asankhya? Moreover, apparently Asankhya deals with only one aspect of the peculiarity of Avyaya, referring to Sankhya. But Avyaya also is a linga. So there is no reference to linga, only Sankhya. Again, is there any special reason why it refers to Sankhya? So if any one of you could explain, we will be really benefited by this. Shall we open this discussion right now? Mahesh?
Yes, we can. So, okay, so for Asankhya, I mean, as Dragomir has also said yesterday, we are yet to kind of work on the edition of the Panchika section, I mean the Chandra Panchika on this particular chapter. That might be our future task. So, but I can still tell you from whatever I have studied in the Chandra system till now. So for Asankhya, I mean, I haven't really found any explanation in the Chandra tradition, at least until now, about why he prefers Asankhya over Avyaya. Because actually there is also no question of Laghava here. I mean, there is no brevity also because, I mean, the two words have the same number of syllables. So we don't really know why he chose that term, but he certainly chose that term. And then he of course also refers to this type of compound as Asankhya Ekartha, or simply as in short as Asankhya. That's what we see. So that's about Asankhya. I think you have made a very good observation. This has been the there's a lightning outside. So Vidyutate Vidyut. Anyway, so the observation is that Chandra often kind of resort to this reduction kind of mechanism. So he likes to reduce all these different subcategories into a broader category. As he has done here, we can see in the case of Abhava, he has kind of included all the 4 different types of Abhavas into one general category, Abhava. Similarly, the Samruddhi and Sampatti. They have also been reduced into one category. Same also with the Sakalya. So, I mean, this has been the Chandra part of the Chandra methodology, the way he presents his grammatical information. That's one point. Then there is one thing. I mean, if we read the rule, I think he ends the rule not with vachaneshu, right? With artheshu, isn't it?
Sorry, I didn't get your point.
No, he in a Chandra rule. Can you please read out the Chandra rule one more time?
Makashite Sakalya Arthe at the end.
Yeah.
Simple Sakalya.
Yes, Sakalya Arthe. That's for the point. I mean, so I mean, Panini had his Vachana, and basically, I mean, it seems to me at least that Panini has also used the word Vachana, not really having in mind this particular difference which we have in the later tradition of whether the artha is vachaka or dyotak. I mean, whether this nipatas or this upasargas are dyotakas or vachakas. I mean, he probably simply means in the sense of, I mean, in the general sense. So I think, therefore, in order to remove any ambiguity, let's say, or also this also achieves brevity. So Chandra seemed to have preferred the word artha over the vachana, and Panini also himself many times uses, I mean, in his own rules, the word artha instead of vachana. Like in the Karaka, we have like saharthe and so on and so forth. I mean, he uses the term artha, or yathartha. We will also get it. No, not here, but I mean later on. Anyway, so his choice of the word artha over vachana is also in a way significant. I think Madam has already mentioned about the word khyati. I mean, he certainly looks for brevity. So instead of and uses more popular term, maybe those which are more popular in his time. I mean, and probably Shabda Pradurbhava was not that popular, not that known at his time. So he replaces it with khyati, more popular term, and it also achieves brevity then. It is also interesting to see that he gives, I mean, the vritti, we have an example, iti panini. So that's why, I mean, as we have said, I mean, though Chandra later on kind of became an independent tradition by its own, other than the Paninian one. But still, I mean, I think that the Chandra Gomin himself did not really think that way. I mean, and what for him, as he mentions in his very first opening stanza, that his job is to in a way revise Panini's grammar to make it more laghu, more vispashta, and more sampurna. I mean, that seems to be his motto. So it seems that he's also having all this respect. So therefore, I think we have this example, iti Panini, not iti Chandra or something like this. So this is also significant for me. There's one point which I would like to make in the end, and that is like we had discussed this question the other day, whether the Chandra Vritti is by another author or is it by the same author, I mean, the Chandra Gomin. And now the question is that if it is by the same, I mean, author, by Chandra Gomin himself, as we have kind of seemed to have concluded last time, then we'll have to assume that the Chandra Vyakarana was composed in the second half of 5th century. That is a kind of a now most accepted date for Chandra Gomin and his work. In that case, Chandra Gomin precedes Kashika. I mean, Chandra Sutra certainly precedes Kashika. And actually, Kilhon has also shown how it has influenced Kashika at some points and so on and so forth. So in that case, what we have to kind of, even at looking at the examples, probably then we have to look at the other way around. We have to say that Kashika has taken over some of these examples for Chandra, or they are already there in the Bhashya. I mean, we'll have to really check how many examples of these come from Bhashya itself, and how many are the new ones, and which are the, where we find the change. So that would be one more perspective which I would like to bring in. And last thing which I wanted to point out was, about this example, Yathavruddham. I think I don't remember correctly right now, but I don't know whether this example Yathavruddham is given in Kashika under the Yatha Asadrushya, I don't remember exactly right now. But Yathavruddham is also significant from a Buddhist point of view because in the Vinaya rules for the Buddhist monks and nuns, this Yathavruddham is very important principle that monks and nuns, I mean, their privileges, or I mean, especially in terms of taking seats in the hall or paying reverence, this always happens Yathavruddham. And this particular expression, not Anujeshtam, of course, means the same. But more than Anujeshtam, the more popular term in the Buddhist literature is Yathavruddham. And I don't know whether that is one of the reasons why Chandra Gomin or the Vrittikara gives this example, in addition to Anujeshtam, which we also find in Kashika. But of course, I mean, we have to look at, if we take the Chandra Gomin in the 5th century, then we'll have to say that maybe the Kashikakara had omitted the example Yathavruddham. I mean, we can't really say. Yeah, that's it from my side. Thank you very much.
Actually, Yathavruddham does appear under the rule Yatha Sadrushya as an example.
Yeah, okay, yeah. So he has just then moved
and
that
he says,
here.
Yathavruddham Brahmanan Amantrayasvo.
Yes, yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, so the example comes at 2 places then. But I mean, one thing is what he has seen is, I mean, he has also removed the category Sadrushya totally, I mean, which Panini has given as a separate category in his rule. And he might have again thought that, I mean, it is Yathartha, I mean, it is part of, I mean, the meaning of Yatha, so it can well be included in Yathartha matter. So yeah, that's another example of reduction. Yes.
Mm-hmm. Anyway.
And he does this very often. I mean, in many other places you will find this throughout Chandra Gomin's Shabda Lakshana.
I really don't know whether it's something is wrong with my mobile or something is wrong with the technology, but it's very difficult for me to hear your voices, although I have put it on my speaker. Anyway, with great difficulty, but ultimately I managed to understand something from what you say. But anyway, based on what I understood from you, Mahesh, I think this issue of relative chronology of Kashika and Chandra has been discussed also by two scholars earlier, like Bronkhorst and perhaps even earlier, the scholar who edited Chandra. Was it Liebisch or?
Yeah, Bruno Liebig, yes.
But maybe you can find more info, or maybe you already have gone through those, their papers, their articles. Anyway, this is just some kind of information I wanted to share with you. So, okay.
Just to add to that, I think recently, I mean, those who are interested, I think recently in 2009 or so, I mean, Vincenzo Vergiani has written an article. He has taken a kind of in a way, overview of this discussion about the date of the Chandra. Thomas Oberlies has also written on this topic, and so on.
Yes.
So, I mean, those who are interested can really refer to this.
Yes. So it's a separate topic actually, and you can go on adding some points on that.
If I may add something.
Sure.
Now, I think the question is not settled yet, and of course, Bronkhorst and other scholars have been discussing the matter, but there's also some misunderstandings, and of course, there is the big problem that they haven't had access to the Panjika, which throws more light on this question, I think. But anyway, Mahesh already raised the question. Mahesh, thanks for this, and thanks also for the video. I'm really missing the rain in Pune. But I'm really now, regardless of this question of the date, I was very eager to hear your opinion, Professor Bhatta, whether you could accept the possibility that not the Kashika has been used in the Chandra Vritti, but the other way around. That actually the Kashika, of course, he had all these meanings, which are more than in the Chandra. So he had to supply further examples to adjust the system, but he was operating on the basis of the Chandra Vritti. So wherever he could take the example from the Vritti, he took it, and then he had to supply in addition several others. And of course, he could have exchanged some of the examples. For example, with the Himalaya, I mean, instead of Trina, he thought of Himalaya. So such changes are quite common also at other places in the Vritti. So my general question is, can you think of this possibility that it is exactly the opposite sequence, just on the basis of this sutra and these examples?
Is this question addressed to me?
Yes, madam.
Well, first of all, I haven't read Chandra in detail, and my answer would be both the possibilities are equally 50-50 right now. It is possible both ways, because on the one hand we find that Kashika gives some additional examples, whereas on the other hand we find that Kashika doesn't give full illustrations, whereas Chandra gives. Chandra gives you complete sentences like Anurupam Sarupa Bhavati, Pratyartham Shabdaha Abhiniveshante. Such kind of details they are missing in Kashika. So who is doing what is very difficult to say at this point of time, and whether this style of adding more information is an indication of coming subsequently, or it is other way around. It is abridging is you can regard as a mark of coming later in time. It's very difficult to say at this moment, but both the possibilities are open. I don't mind accepting if there is enough evidence to prove that Kashika follows Chandra, obviously. And if the myth, or if I don't know whether it is a myth, I should if the fact maybe, or if the reference to Chandra or Chandracharya in Vakyapadiya as reviving the tradition of Mahabhashya is right, is correct, and if that Chandracharya is the same as this Chandra, then obviously we have to accept this Chandra as preceding Kashika. But in that case, what we find is that right from the beginning, Kashika appears to be completely ignorant about Mahabhashya. Kashika never mentions Patanjali. It only refers to Vartikas, but it never mentions Patanjali. Though often it repeats phrases from Mahabhashya. So we really do not know the relative positions of all these grammarians. Because Kashika doesn't appear to know Patanjali, the natural conclusion drawn by the recent linguists is that Kashika belongs to a totally different tradition from the tradition that was inherited by Katyayana and Patanjali. So we have two parallel streams running right from the earliest commentary on Ashtadhyayi. Maybe they have drawn on some common source, but they differ in some details. So we give actually what we get is a mixed picture, and therefore it is very difficult to conclude at this point actually. But maybe those of you who have thoroughly studied Chandra and have done a thorough comparison with Kashika and come up with a conclusion that it is Kashika which is indebted to Chandra, it is Kashika which which draws upon Chandra. I have no objection in accepting that. because I mean, Pandinian tradition is already indebted to Chandracharya for reviving Mahabhashya.
If I may add something here, I think actually it seems more probable to assume that yes, I mean the Chandra tradition in a way is closer to Bhashya, and yeah, in fact later commentators of Chandra, I mean the Chandra Vritti, and if you even take the Panchakas, I mean they are having Kashika and the Nyasa as a Purva Paksha, but they never criticize Patanjali. I mean, what I feel is my feeling about the Chandra's whole endeavor is that he is basically boldly incorporating all the suggestions made by Vartikara and Patanjali, but being bold. So wherever even they have noticed that these particular mentions are not really, I mean, they are repetitive, or they are these prapancha, and sometimes you should make do the pratyakhyana, but they never did it. But I mean, Chandra only step further which he takes is that he actually brings it into action, and he actually does all those changes. I mean, all these questions which we saw in Kashika, which ask about like why we need, I mean, why there's a justification, why we need Sampatti and Samruddhi as two different word expressions, why Sakalya and Anta needs to be separated. There is always a justification. So this in a way indicates that, of course, the tradition was aware of some kind of prapancha, some kind of redundancy in such details. The only thing is that since I mean they never tried to amend Panini his text or revised his text, which Chandra did. I think that's how I basically look at it at this point.
Okay. I cannot add anything to this right now. And thank you for adding some points to this discussion. Shall we continue? What time it is?
I think we have finished the Vritti, right? The Chandra Vritti.
We have finished Chandra Vritti, yes.
Then I think let us stop here because it's almost 6:30, and instead of starting a new sutra, we can stop here. I just wanted to, refer to, today I've received an email from Mr. Satish Joshi. He's one of the participants of this workshop, and he has made some suggestion. Actually, I have forwarded the email also to Professor Bhate. But I think, when he was suggesting, of course, myself and Dragomir to kind of make some addition, and which we are already doing. So I think the way we are doing it, I think makes also sense. So because Professor Bhate will be comparing the things and presenting it before, and then whenever additional things which we need or which we know and which we think that we want to share, that we will share in such discussions. So I think that will satisfy your need, Mr. Joshi. Yeah, I mean that's one thing I wanted to just refer to because of your email, which I saw. I mean, just before the session, so I could not answer you. I forwarded it to Professor Bhate, but I think today I thought that I will answer it during this particular session.
Yeah, it's satisfying.
Yeah, so I think this is exactly what we have done today. I mean, as you must have seen, I mean, Professor Bhate read the whole sutra. Yes. And then she also made her comments, and we, myself and Dragomir, we have just added our comments. So I think that way it helps because, yeah, then it goes in flow, and then it does not really disturb our reading.
Yeah.
So, but I mean, to all others, I mean, let me also tell you that if you have any suggestions for us, for Professor Bhate, please feel free to share them. We are always open to all the suggestions because this entire endeavor is for all of us to understand Panini and Chandra better, the Kashika and the Chandra in a better light. So whatever suggestions you have, whatever thoughts you have, whatever comments you have, please feel free to share. Yes, and I'm sure that Professor Bhate also, she always, I mean, she has made appeals so many times, but she is always kind of welcoming such comments and discussions. So please feel free to do so. Yeah, thanks for your comment. I mean, I'm really happy that you're taking deep interest in this study. Yeah, thank you very much.
Sorry, Mahesh, I really could not understand what the comment was.
I think I have forwarded his email to you. I mean, what
Okay.
Joshi was
All right.
suggesting.
I will read it. No
Yeah.
problem.
So what he was suggesting is that we should, make elaborate comments also on the Chandra rule. So I think
I'm very happy.
that's what
Yes,
I said, that we are actually doing this. I mean, we have done it today
Yes,
quite
yes,
extensively, and I think so. We are really, but I appreciate his suggestions. It shows that he is really
Yes,
taking deep interest in the subject. I have forwarded the email to you. You can read it.
I'm personally very more interested in all this kind of a comparison, and it naturally comes to our mind, so we cannot just skip.
Yeah.
It comes so in a flow. It comes, and we cannot skip it. It's a part of our discussion. So.
Yeah, I mean, unfortunately, we haven't really, completed, worked on the Chandra Panjika edition of this portion, which is our future plan. We have been working on the Karaka section right now. So there we can offer really more and comments. And we also have the text kind of prepared for the Chandra Panjika for comparison. And there you can really see a dialogue between Nyasa and Kashika on one hand and the Chandra tradition on the other. So anyway, that's for future maybe. So thank you very much then, all of you. And thank you, Professor Bhate, for such a wonderful, lucid exposition. And I especially really admire the openness with which she approaches the whole issue. So I'm really thankful to her. Actually, my first lesson in Moggallana were, in her class. She was my first teacher to teach even the Pali grammar. I mean, where I started, apart from the Sanskrit. So I'm really thankful to her. And actually, Madam, just to share, I was just going through all my old cassette tapes. I'm converting them right now into a digital format. And actually, I also found out that the very first Chandra rules I read with you, the Pratyahara Sutras and so on. So I still have the recording, maybe around 30 years ago or 25, at least 25 to 26 years ago. Yeah, so it's so nice to have all those memories being refreshed one more time. So thank you very much, and thanks to everybody, all the participants. See you on Saturday at 4:30 p.m. Yeah, so thanks a lot. So bye-bye to everybody.
Thank you. Bye-bye. Bye-bye.
Thank you, sir. Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.